No one anticipated it. The basketball world went into a frenzy when the WNBA named Caitlin Clark a Rookie of the Year and a member of the first team All-WNBA. But no one anticipated that Chennedy Carter would respond the way she did. As one of the league's most fervent and unpredictable stars, Chennedy went completely crazy on and off the court. Cameras flashed, social media went viral, and fans across the world watched in shock. Minutes later, reports began to come in. One observer reported that Kennedy's water bottle went across the corridor, almost missing a team trainer, and colleagues reported hearing yelling coming from inside the locker room. However, this was only the start. Kennedy's annoyance only intensified when word got out. Spectators saw her slam the door so forcefully that it reverberated across the stadium as she stormed out of the team gathering. Even the security personnel were left in shock, muttering that in all their years with the league, they had never witnessed anything like it. Fans divided between those advocating for penalties and others defending Kennedy's fiery personality as videos. Memes and crazy ideas went viral on Twitter and Instagram, however. A leaked video from the locker room was what truly ignited the internet. In it, Chennedy is shown pacing back and forth while voicing her disapproval at what she perceives to be a grave injustice against the league. The media, and even her own teammates. How is this fair at all? Her voice cracks with rage as she yells, "I labored for this, as you are all aware." But since she's the new face, they just give it to her. The video went viral right after, leaving both fans and critics wondering if this is the breakdown that will define Chandler's career, or if it's simply another episode in the OneBuzz ongoing turmoil. When the first videos of Chennedy Carter's reaction began to circulate, the globe was still in a frenzy, but the atmosphere inside the stadium was even more tumultuous. Half of the audience gasped in surprise, while the other half erupted in loud applause as soon as Caitlin Clark's name was spoken over the speakers. With his knuckles white and every muscle coiled like a tempest about to burst, Chennedy perched. At the edge of the bench, her teammates gave her a tense look, but no one dared to speak. Everyone was aware of how much she valued the honor, how many hours she had dedicated to it, and how many times she had endured criticism and suffering. However, it became hard to conceal Kennedy's rage as the applause continued. The initial moments of the outburst were captured by a fan who was able to slip backstage. After hurling her jersey onto the floor and kicking a stray basketball so forcefully that it rebounded off the wall and overturned a pile of towels, Chennedy barged into the locker room. "This is a joke," she screamed, her voice shaking with rage. "All they want is a headline." Her best buddy on the squad attempted to reassure her, but Chennedy was not having any of it. "It's never about who really deserves it. Please don't tell me to relax. If you were this person, would you relax? They always want someone else to take center stage." The tension increased as media waited for post-game interviews outside the door. Inside, some comrades exchanged nervous glances, not sure whether to raise their voices or remain silent. "She's going to say something she regrets," one novice murmured as another shook her head. "She's only being honest. The league has to be." Called out. Fans were glued to their phones in the seats, watching the locker room footage that went viral in real time. While some were taken aback, others applauded Chennedy for voicing her opinions. One admirer said on Twitter, "She's not wrong. Everyone knows that the league has its favorites." Another said, adding that this is the year's biggest breakdown. Even former NBA greats voiced their opinions, with some praising Kennedy's fervor and others advocating for professionalism and deference. She's losing it over Clark's hype. However, Chennedy wasn't done yet. Chennedy observed from a distance, arms folded and eyes furrowed, as Caitlin Clark entered the room smiling and waving to the cameras as the press conference began. Chennedy had a direct response when a reporter inquired about her own season and her thoughts on Caitlin's accolades. "I believe the league chooses the players they wish to use. I'm not interested in making headlines." The tension crackled as the room fell silent. "I play for wins." Always tactful, Caitlin merely grinned and declared her appreciation for each player in the league, but Kennedy's scowl conveyed a different message. Naturally, the internet simply served to fuel the fires. Chennedy Carter goes ballistic after Clark's sweep was the headline of one site, while another pondered whether her outburst would result in a punishment. Videos of supporters mimicking Kennedy's tirade and others piecing together every tearful moment from her season to demonstrate the amount of pressure she had been under appeared one after the other. There were heated discussions over whether this was an indication of an overly concerned player or evidence that the league's top players were faltering under the spotlight. The drama persisted throughout the evening. The members of Kennedy's crew divided into two groups. Some came together to support her, claiming that she had every right to be angry since she had been ignored for too long. Others avoided the spotlight out of concern that it would further polarize a season already tainted by scandal. The coach of the club called an urgent meeting and urged everyone to remain composed and concentrate on the impending playoffs. However, behind closed doors, no one was discussing basketball. Instead, everyone was curious about what Chennedy would do next. Meanwhile, Caitlin Clark was thrust into an uncomfortable limelight. She acknowledged that she hadn't talked to Chennedy since the news, but she informed the reporters that she was humbled and honored. Even though she made an effort to remain upbeat, rumors followed her down the corridor, with both supporters and detractors analyzing every grin, response, and exchange with her competitors. "I know it's emotional," she remarked softly, "but I just want to play the game and earn respect." Fans gathered outside the arena to talk about what had transpired. Some were demanding for a league inquiry, while others were fully in favor of Chennedy. One man informed a reporter she would already be fined if this were the NBA. Another fan remarked, "But maybe the WNBA needs that kind of fire to get noticed. But it's just sports. People get sentimental. She cares. At least." Kennedy eventually spoke out on social media as daylight drew near. "They'll never know how hard I worked," she said in a brief but honest message. "I don't play for publicity. I play for my city and my team." However, the tweet received hundreds of likes and comments in a matter of minutes, with fans and other players expressing support or demanding accountability. In a succinct statement, the league stated that while they will investigate any post-game occurrences, they had no influence over the discussion at this time. The league was under strain, the city was split, and everyone was waiting to see what Chennedy would do next. No one could predict if this would blow over or blow up even more. But there was no denying that turmoil like this was unavoidable in a league full of celebrities. The following morning, the league headquarters was a flurry of activity, with phones ringing constantly as officials rushed to manage the story. Executives convened emergency meetings out of concern that things may get worse. One executive paced while holding a phone to his ear and muttering, "We can't let this become a circus." Another concerned voice recommended giving Chennedy a formal warning. But the head of public relations warned that if we silence her now, it will appear much worse. If the fans think the league is rigged, it will take years to rebuild trust. The world is observing. In the meantime, there was mayhem in the team's group chat. As participants attempted to comprehend what had transpired, messages were sent back and forth. Some pleaded with everyone to be quiet and avoid the commotion, because they were sick of being in the spotlight. Others, still energized from the previous evening, texted Chennedy to encourage her to keep going. One buddy wrote, "They can't punish you for speaking the truth. If you need anything, I'm here." However, there were also reports that several players had sent Caitlin a private message, expressing regret for the events that had transpired and assuring her that things would soon settle down. As practice restarted, the division in the locker room widened. Chennedy arrived early, avoiding eye contact with the coaches and the most of her teammates while wearing headphones. There was tension in the air. Everyone noticed the change, despite the coach's best efforts to maintain order by reviewing plays and conducting exercises. No one knew whether to confront the elephant in the room or continue as if nothing had occurred at the same time. Caitlin Clark had a full schedule of media inquiries and interviews. In an attempt to create a soundbite that would go viral, each source sought to provide their own version of events. "Did you witness Kennedy's response?" one reporter inquired. Caitlin nodded, her words cautious. This league is a highly emotional place. Everybody wants to win, and we are all competitors. I like Chennedy as a player and understand how much this means to her. While some praised her poise under duress, others said that she was sidestepping the important topics. Fans argued about whether Caitlin was avoiding further scandal by keeping her distance or by being modest. The narrative spread beyond basketball into popular culture. Late-night comedians made jokes about the incident, referring to it as the WNBA's biggest reality show moment. Twitter was overflowing with memes of Kennedy's outburst, some of which were sarcastic and some of which were empathetic. She threw her water bottle in slow motion while listening to dramatic music in a widely shared TikTok edit. However, someone retaliated to every joke. One commenter said, "It's easy to laugh when you're not the one being overlooked," which sparked a fresh round of debates on bias, respect, and who actually receives recognized in women's sports. WNBA. Veterans' opinions were raised by the dispute, and several of them spoke forward to endorse Kennedy's candor. On a sports talk program, a former MVP stated, "She's great because she's passionate." The league needs a wake-up call sometimes. However, another legend advised Kennedy to keep in mind her impact, saying that sometimes it is necessary to question the system. Young athletes are observing. Fans took sides in the discussion, which took place on talk programs, podcasts, and other social media platforms. You can be real without losing control. Kennedy's family also experienced the effects behind closed doors. Her mother called to check on her, her voice shaking. "Shh." She said, "I know you're hurt, but don't let them make you the bad guy." On his Instagram, her younger brother, who plays high school sports, wrote, "Big sis always keeps it real." These letters gave Chennedy some consolation, but they also made her aware of the attention and the pressure that now followed her everywhere. "They'll never understand how hard you work." All eyes were on Kennedy and Caitlin in the next game. Every time the two were close to one another, cameras zoomed in, reporters lined the baseline, and the arena was completely filled out. Kennedy put out her best effort, sending a message to her detractors with each basket and steal. Calm and composed, Caitlin executed the attack with accuracy, never allowing the stress to divert her attention. Fans closely observed their every action, analyzing each look and conversation. The audience went wild as Caitlin made a long three-pointer over Chennedy. Kennedy responded immediately with a fierce stare-down and a driving layup. The competition was intense and captivating, making the game a must-watch on television. Reporters mobbed both stars after the game. Still full of energy, Kennedy spoke to the press. She declared, "I play with my heart, and I will never apologize for that. All I want is fairness." Caitlin adopted a more tactful stance, praising her teammates for her performance and wished Chennedy the best, saying, "If speaking up makes people uncomfortable, maybe it's time for the league to look in the mirror." She avoided any controversy by saying, "Competition brings out the best in all of us." The league promised to address all player concerns with care and respect in a subsequent statement. But many fans thought that the words were meaningless. Online, a movement emerged advocating for more voting and recognition openness. As fans and former athletes shared their own triumphs and frustrations, hashtags like "Let Players Be Real" and "One Deserves Better" began to gain popularity. The debate didn't seem to be abating as the week went on. Sponsors and businesses started to comment. Some expressed support for Kennedy's fervor, while others discreetly distanced themselves from the commotion. Behind closed doors, league officials and coaches discussed whether this was a hiccup or a watershed moment for women's sports. Kennedy continued to perform her talents as captivating as ever. However, it was evident that the emotional toll was growing even as she excelled on the court. "I appreciate the love and the hate," she said in another late-night post to her supporters. "I am aware of who I am. All I want is respect. That's it." Her remarks resonated with everyone who had ever felt left out or misinterpreted. The narrative was far from ended, yet the season continued. There were suggestions that league executives were thinking about implementing additional regulations for player rewards and behavior. There were rumors that a covert meeting between Clinton and Caitlin was being planned as a final opportunity to resolve the matter before to the start of the playoffs. However, since the feelings were so raw, no one knew if the feud would define the remainder of the season or if reconciliation was conceivable. The world continued to watch, anticipating the next development in a tale that had grown beyond basketball. One issue still stood as the stakes increased. How far would Chennedy Carter go to establish her right to be heard? Nobody knew what to anticipate on the day of the alleged encounter. In the early morning mist, press fans stood outside the practice facility, their engines running, ready to report any news of a breakthrough or a breakdown. Fans came with homemade placards, some yelling her name and cheering for Chennedy, while others held up images of Caitlin Clark. The tension within was so thick that a knife could cut through it. League authorities had set up a private meeting between the two players, accompanied by coaches and mediators. Chennedy arrived first, still exuding the rebellious spirit that had made her a beloved among fans but also a source of controversy. Minutes later, Caitlin showed out with a composed demeanor and her trademark poise, which she maintained as she passed a crowd of reporters yelling her name. There was uneasy stillness as the meeting started. The weight of all that had transpired hung over the table for a full minute before anybody spoke. Chennedy broke the ice at last. Her voice was softer than anybody had heard in weeks as she remarked, "I'm not trying to make it about you." Caitlin nodded and said, "I just want things to be fair. I understand. I understand what it's like to feel left out. In one way or another, we all do. But everyone, even the league, is watching us. We must not allow them to set us against one another." It was an honest, uncomfortable, and even heartbreaking talk. Both athletes expressed their annoyance by telling tales of hardship, selflessness, and the constant pressure that came with serving as the league spokesperson. Caitlin acknowledged that her unexpected celebrity occasionally made her feel alone. Chennedy talked about how knowing that every action she performed would be scrutinized online had a negative impact on her mental health, though the room gradually melted as the discussion went on. As the players worked out what many athletes felt but hardly ever spoke out loud, coaches listened. Chennedy shook her head and remarked, "They want us to be rivals because it makes headlines. However, we're all only seeking to win in the end." "And see," Caitlin concurred. "Let's demonstrate to them what true respect looks like. We don't have to destroy one another just because we're competing." Word spread that the gathering was taking place outside. Online, people made wild guesses about what was being said. While some feared more pyrotechnics, others hoped for a reconciliation. Popular subjects like women supporting women and Chennedy versus Caitlin competed for attention on social media. "Our stars, our voices," the league's official account tweeted. Within minutes, the tweet went viral saying, "Change begins here." The meeting adjourned 2 hours later. Both players came out together, accompanied by coaches and league representatives. They nodded to each other, a little gesture of respect and understanding, before walking quietly to their cars rather than talking to media. Fans watched something more significant than a fight that made headlines. Two athletes who were prepared to face the system and one another head-on. The benefits were felt right away. Other participants started talking, sharing their own triumphant and frustrating memories. While rookies shared messages about progress and togetherness, older stars demanded greater openness and equity in the awards voting process. Whether this will ultimately force the league to make long overdue adjustments was up for discussion among analysts. The season seemed different, even though the teams went back to their regular schedules. Chennedy performed with the same ferocity as before, but her interviews were more composed and targeted. "I said what I had to say," she told reporters. Now, it's about basketball. Caitlin, too, remained focused and let her play speak for itself, guiding her team through a difficult run of games and winning the respect of even her former detractors. The drama had grown beyond a single outburst for the supporters. People who had never seen an NBA game before became engrossed, paying attention to the rivalry as well as the authenticity and intensity of the action. By emphasizing the narratives behind the numbers, social media campaigns encouraged the league to increase its investment in its players. Sports programs discussed whether this dispute will be seen as a turning moment or as a black eye. League executives discussed new ideas behind closed doors. Some proposed player forums where athletes might voice their complaints and influence league regulations. Others proposed player-run award voting panels to make sure no one was unjustly left out. Sponsors who had recanted during the issue suddenly came forward to offer to help athletes develop their leadership skills and access mental health resources. The intensity increased as the playoffs drew near, with the excitement and expectation at an all-time high. Both Clinton and Caitlin guided their teams well into the postseason. Sports lovers from all around the world attended their sold-out, electrifying matches. The audience roared in joy of two stars who had transformed trouble into conversation when they shook hands at center court prior to the game, rather than in controversy. The cameras saw Chennedy and Caitlin cuddling at midcourt following the season's last buzzer, both of them grinning and weary. "Respect," stated Chennedy plainly. "Always," said Caitlin. The picture went viral and was the ideal conclusion to a story that began in anarchy and concluded in understanding. Even though the season was coming to an end, the discussion was only getting started. What transpired had altered players, spectators, and even the league itself. Whether or not they agreed with her, people discussed, analyzed, eventually admired what Chennedy Carter had done. One thing is evident from all the turmoil: emotional outbursts and meltdowns. This was never only about a trophy or a championship. Conversations well beyond basketball have been triggered by Chelsea Carter's outburst, Caitlin Clark's ascent, and the league's inability to keep up. Whether passion belongs in sports or should be kept private, as well as who is right and who was wrong, are still topics of discussion among fans. While some believe that Chennedy should have maintained her composure, others believe that her ferocity is precisely what the WNBA needs to succeed. Everyone does agree, though, that the game will never be the same. It's your chance to comment now. Do you believe that Chennedy went too far? Or did she simply express what all underappreciated athletes are thinking? Does the league need to reconsider how it compensates its stars? Or did Caitlin deserve the attention? Do rivalries help the game, or do they cause teams to fall apart? For the most outrageous sports tales you won't find anywhere else, subscribe, leave a comment, and press like. If you want more behind-the-scenes drama, participate in the discussion, and let's continue this argument because your voice matters. Thank you for viewing. Keep in mind that each player has a backstory, each league has its secrets. And occasionally, the most memorable events occur when the cameras are not filming. Keep it polite, keep it authentic, and check back here for more incredible stories.